been a while since I've done a pod. Want to talk hoops tonight. Have a football podcast coming out very soon with David Anderson. Really impressed with Kirk Shiraka's comments this week. Posted the presser on my website. Want to talk about just the state of the team, perspective, things to watch for this spring. So that'll be coming out momentarily, but wanted to talk about Rutgers hoops in this episode. Obviously, portal season is off and running. Lathan Somerville landing in Washington, obviously, was pretty quick on his end. And, I just wanted to say, listen, there's comments out there, that he doesn't care about winning. He's just for the bag. Can I just say, why are we criticizing teenagers for doing what they think is best for them? And if that's a payday, that's a payday. Like, do we criticize as adults? Do you criticize friends or coworkers that leave for a arguably similarly successful or reputational company for a bigger salary? Do we mock them for that? So why are we mocking teenagers for doing that? Listen, it just goes back to me to like this kind of old way of thinking that players don't deserve to make money, which they do. Whether you like the state of things in college basketball and college sports, fair. Everyone can right to their opinion. To say that it's killing college basketball, it's not. It's changing college basketball. Ratings are through the roof. The traditional teams that we know are gone, and that is upsetting, right? For anyone that's rooted for one college for years and years, it's different, right? But at the same time, there's good and bad with every change. And I think the benefit of the portal and revenue sharing and NIL now is that teams that were bad last year can be good next year. And I just think the mindset of we can only look at players from high major teams, that's a narrow-minded mindset. And I think that, I put out a tweet tonight and people got fired up and a lot of people disagree, and that's fine. But I said, if as a fan of Rutgers, I hope they target players in mid-major leagues such as the Missouri Valley Conference, the Mountain West Conference, the Atlantic 10 Conference. There's no foolproof, fail-proof formula, right? I'm just saying, in general, a profile of players, veteran players from winning programs in those leagues that are productive at that level can translate to the Big Ten and make for productive, efficient players in the Big Ten. Look at John Tanji at Wisconsin. First team All Big Ten. Where did he come from? Colorado State. Where did Jacoby Gillespie come from? Belmont, a lower level league, right? He's one of the best players in the league. Look at Michigan with Wolf from Yale and Golden from Florida Atlantic. I mean, players from other levels can be successful in the Big Ten. Has Rutgers struggled in finding that? Yes. Am I saying low-level players are high success rate? No. Rutgers proved that this past year. But I'm talking about the mid-major level, those better mid-major leagues. There's a lot of talent in those leagues. There's a lot of productivity in those leagues that can translate. And no, I'm not saying Rutgers shouldn't target Power 4, Power 5 players. But I'd much rather a productive veteran player from a mid-major league like that than a former top 100 recruit that failed at a high major. Yes, if there's a productive high major player that wants to come to Rutgers, great. NIL revenue share, yeah, you have to think budget-minded, right? And Rutgers probably could land one or two of those, but they can't land a whole roster full of them. And I'm not saying land a whole roster full of mid-major, low-major players, right? But you have to look at productivity. You have to look at experience. Rutgers needs veteran guys. They don't need failed top 100 recruits that played 1 year at a Power 4 and is looking to move on. That speaks to mentality as well. Steve Peichel needs to find fits, players that are hard-nosed, that know how to play a role on a winning team. That's the profile you need. And where they come from matters, yes. But, people like to pigeonhole things and say those kind of players can't make it to the Big Ten. We need other Power 4 players. Well, that doesn't necessarily make winners, right? So, yes, if you can get a Power 4 transfer that was on a good team, that was productive, that maybe played a smaller role, that could play a bigger role at Rutgers, yeah, I'm all for it. Hopefully, you can afford them. Listen, if going into this year, right, if Wolf was coming from Yale and Somerville was coming from Rutgers, who would you rather have? I'd rather have Wolf, even though he came from Yale. I know that's easy to say now, but if you followed Wolf at Yale, you would say that. So, and I'm not trying to be snarky. I'm just saying, as a Rutgers fan, that's what I hope the staff targets. They haven't had any reported visits yet. They're in the mix. I'm focusing less on names that are out there because there's a lot of names out there. And a lot of times with Rutgers, I feel like when they're linked to players reported, that's not necessarily who they're actually targeting, right? They love to fly under the radar. And also, low major players that maybe had big numbers but were inefficient shooting the basketball. It's very rare for a low major player to get more efficient at the high major level. And I've had Tyson Acuff's name throw at me as a negative example several times. I don't think people realize. I mean, Tyson Acuff shot over 35% from three different times in his career. Acuff shot 39% from three on 97 attempts for Rutgers this year on a bum leg, right? He shot 39% at Duquesne. He shot 35% at Eastern Michigan, one of the 2 seasons. He shot 39% for Rutgers. So, again, the max a mid-major, but also that guy was a legit scorer. He unfortunately was injured, right, coming into the year. It definitely impacted his play, but the guy could shoot. And it wasn't like he had that one bad year at Eastern Michigan when he shot way too many shots. But he is not the type of player I'm talking about. I'm talking about the player that shoots in the high 30s, low 40s, scores 20 points a game, 15 to 20 points a game at a low major level, high usage, not going to translate, in my opinion, more times than not at the high major level. So there's a lot of depth here to what we're talking about in terms of the types of players Rutgers needs to find. And there's no perfect way, right? And there's no perfect profile. But I'm just saying, I think thinking about just P4 transfers is too narrow and not in depth enough in terms of what this team actually needs. And people are going to rely on the fact that Durkak from a low major and Martini from a low major, Acuff, Hayes came from one of the best conferences there is in basketball. West Coast Conference is right there with the Missouri Valley and A10 and also the Mountain West, right there. A lot of good teams in the West Coast. Those players didn't work out, and I'm not saying that you get more players from that they won't work out, but there's a certain type of profile. Obviously, once you get into that, right? Productivity, efficiency, athleticism, ability to play roles on winning teams, to do the little things. Those are all things that the staff needs to be evaluating. I like that they're taking their time a little bit here. They're not rushing into players they know. They're not just, looking to fill the roster. You have a lot of freshmen and sophomore on this roster. You got to find veterans. You got to find seniors from teams that, are tough. They need mentally tough players. That's something they've been lacking. So we'll see what happens. A lot more to come. Revenue sharing, again, it's next week. We'll know for sure. I think another thing to look for, and maybe why someone like Somerville kind of seems like they jumped at the first big bid, is that there's going to be regulation tied to the revenue sharing in regard to NIL. Once revenue sharing is in place, there's going to be some type of regulatory system for NIL. So you're going to see a lot of players right now in the portal asking for way above market value. And the market's got to work itself out. We've talked about this year over year. But players that are looking to cash out with NIL now, they're looking to do so because in July 1st, when the revenue sharing goes into place, that NIL figure is going to be controlled. It's going to be interesting to see how the market plays out. It's going to be interesting to see who Rutgers can actually get on campus. I understand the negativity. I'm extremely negative from last season, very disappointed in the program. But again, the portal and NIL era if you look at it from a half glass full, they can turn things around pretty quickly, right? And I love that Grant is a key piece to this. I've stated before, I think they need 4 starters out of the portal. Yeah, can you get 1 or 2 from a Power 4 team that came off the bench last year that was productive, that's looking for a bigger role? I'm all for that, right? But I think you also got to get guys from mid-major teams. I hope they avoid the low major. And if you do get a low major player, it's got to fit a certain skill set. It's got to fit a certain need. And you have to see something on film that makes you think that they can be productive at the Big Ten level. But the more margin for error there for sure. Like Florida is in the Final Four, a number 1 seed. They come from the SEC, a better league than the Big Ten. Walter Clayton's from Iona, absolute stud. Elijah Martin's from Florida Atlantic. They have Sam Alexis from Chattanooga before he got hurt. They have Chinyelu, a former Rutgers star. He was at Washington State, no longer a P4. So it can be done. It can be done. And it's not, I think, just in terms of an extreme view, right? You can't just look at the name of the school or the name of the conference. You have to look at fit for the program, finding a role, productivity from where they're coming from, and that is a big part of it. So please, let's just all wait and see what Rutgers does. I know people are looking to just keep jumping on the negative bandwagon. I am not. I want reasons to be positive about this upcoming season. But, yes, I'm concerned. And before I end it, let's just remind everybody it's April 2nd. Rutgers has no president, no athletic director, no head of legal counsel, no GM for basketball. They are behind in every way. And it's very frustrating as a Rutgers fan to be in this predicament for all sports and for the university in general. There should be a president in place by now. I'm sorry. Yes, do your due diligence, but let's also keep a timeline that yields positive results and puts the university in a better spot for the coming months and the coming years. And now you're almost at the end of the school year, the transitional period. I think Holloway's done at the end of May or June. I mean, it's very tight. And then you got to have a whole AD search with that. They probably hired a search firm. I wish, I just want this university to succeed in every way. I hope they find the best president and AD possible. Legal counsel is going to be really important in this revenue sharing world now with all these regulations. And of course, and Steve Peichel, to his credit, last week admitted he was behind in talking to the media, saying, he hasn't hired a GM yet, and they're behind, and they are. And again, that comes from the top with leadership, Steve Peichel, accountability. This program needs to have the utmost urgency in rebuilding this season, but they need to make smart decisions too. And they need to find the right fits. They need to find Steve Peichel type players. And again, that doesn't just mean looking to win 55 to 54 every game, right? Yes, you need defense. You need rebounding. You need mentality players that fit that mold. But at the same time, you need players that know how to create and know how to play basketball and know how to play together and can score the basketball too. So there's got to be a balance here. Football podcast coming soon with David Anderson. I rambled a bit here, a little bit of a rant, but I just want the best for Rutgers. And I think as fans, be open-minded in terms of the type of players they're targeting. And no, I'm not just saying from an NIL perspective. Yes, you have to be smart budget-wise. You can't just go after all the big names that are on the market. But look, some of the best players in the portal and the most highly regarded are not from Power 4 schools. Look at 24/7 Sports top 50 players in the portal right now. Number 1, Yaxel Lendenberg from UAB. Bennett Sturts from Drake. RJ Luis, from St. John's, but where did he come from? UMass. Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw State did damage to Rutgers. Jacoby Gillespie again from Maryland. Where did he come from? He came from Belmont. Those were all players in the top 10 rankings. There's a lot of Power 4 players behind them in the 10 to 20 range. So please keep an open mind. I hope Rutgers does their due diligence. They need to build a winning roster. They need tough-minded, productive players, veteran players that know how to win games and know how to play as a team. And that's what matters most. Thanks so much for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful Podcast.